Hello once again everyone, it has been quite some time. The return of everyone's favorite squid celebrity that you've never heard of, but it's okay, I forgive you. I think it's finally time I pass down the bread and butter of Bread's playstyle. My ancient ninja techniques, and I'm not talking about the ninja squid ability. I mean the game sense that will literally transform you into a masterful assassin and give you an edge in combat, whose very presence will keep the entire enemy team on edge, especially when they can't detect your presence. This will be helpful for you would-be aggro players, but I think support and backline players will also find some value for those of you who may be wondering why they find themselves constantly getting flanked. If there is one thing I'm proud of about my play, it's my ability to get anywhere on the map at pretty much any time I want. But enough with the fanfare, let the lesson begin. There's no real order to these concepts, but the main mantra will be, leave no trace. So starting at random, one of the first techniques I want to impart is the importance of a clean approach. This is literally an ink-based game, so I want you to imagine this like you're coloring and trying to stay within the lines of a picture. Nothing is more inviting to your unsuspecting prey than a path of their own ink. So in order to avoid disturbing the harmony of the enemy hue, you'll commonly see me trace the boundaries of my environment without my own ink extending into the enemy's line of sight. I left no trace of my approach, and therefore my opponents had no reason to activate either a fight or flight response, leaving their guard down exactly the way I like it. And once you have good amounts of map already painted for you, your approaches can be even more optimized without the need to spend almost any actions needing to turf at all, letting you get in position that much sooner and stealthily. On the opposite side of cleanly mindfulness for your own ink, keep in mind the average player will be the complete opposite. The opposition doesn't really care about the presence of enemy ink, as long as the majority of it in an area is their own color. Even in Turf War, you can see how the majority of people don't dedicate that much time perfectly inking in the finer details of every nook and cranny. And in their defense, that's by no means an incorrect sentiment, as time is a very valuable resource. And why would you want to spend any more of it than you have to in an overly perfectionist turfing manner? That's precisely why you can use such a general notion to your advantage as a ninja in almost every game of Splatoon you play and against almost every player you will face. I should probably mention, this can lead to some pretty close shaves with how risky it can be. Playing with enemy fire will always have less than a 100% success rate. But securing a good position can be worth its weight in gold, and sometimes more than outweighs the risk. So now let's move from main weapons to sub-weapons. Back in the Splat 1 era, I received a piece of advice that continues to live rent-free in my mindset to this very day. I believe it came from the old Splat 1 legend Goddess Wolf, which I had then heard secondhand through my squid partner in crime 9-Hole Grains. But regardless of where it originated, I will now pass it on to you, my dear viewer. Sub-weapons are not subtle. The presence of a sub-weapon betrays your proximity, and what I mean by that is, the sub-weapon had to have come from somewhere, but you can usually trace back to the presence of a weapon in the vicinity. It's a common notion that your sub-weapon is a safe option to try and apply some type of pressure without needing to directly run and gun with your main weapon. Again, not an incorrect idea that a majority of players have, but also again, a concept we will turn on its head to give you an advantage against most players. As a ninja, knowing the location of the enemy is of vital importance, informing you where you can or can't sneak. This is seemingly a harmless sprinkler, nothing that needs to be immediately dealt with, but in my eyes, it's a declaration of war. And such a calling card can only come from one of the suspects at the top of my screen. Normally, you'd think something long-range like a Splatling would like to be up high, but it's clearly absent from where you would typically expect. But the mere presence of their sprinkler quickly eliminates almost all guesswork as to their approximate location. And as a ninja, we are trained to expect the unexpected. And sure enough, look what the sub-weapon dragged in. You'll notice my deliberate inking within the lines to mask my own counter-approach as not to spook this usurper of trickery. But we all know just how many moves ahead of them I've been this whole time due to the habit of carelessly throwing out sub-weapons. So how might a ninja go about using their sub-weapon without leaving a trace? Well, fortunately, there are plenty of places in the game where your sub-weapon can still have a high efficacy and minimal visibility. Hidden suction bombs are some of the most devious offenders, especially when they can be planted in high-traffic areas with little to no detection. But for something like a splat bomb which can't cling to walls, using stage ledges to obscure them from view can lead to some painful missteps for your opponents as well. Combine that with some intuition of where the enemy likes to come from and, well, you've earned yourself a few seconds on somebody's splatted cam. But now let's talk about opposite extremes and putting your sub-weapon out in the open on full display, with the ninja art of Misdirection. One of my favorite minigames is to bait people with splash walls and beacons. It's a wall and it's meant to protect, so of course the common idea is to stand behind it in order to receive said protection. But what if you just don't? What if you went anywhere else? You can see I revealed my location with the K-shot, but then went back to the left to throw my wall. Naturally, they interpret that as me deciding to stand my ground over there, when it's just a bait as I'm going right back to where I initially was. I'll use walls like this all the time when playing Flingza or Kenza 52, and of course I'll use them as intended for shielding too. But this just adds a nice aggro option that essentially paralyzes an enemy in place before they quickly realize what's going on. So how do beacons fit into this equation? Well, it's certainly a bit harder since they hardly protect you, but if the flow of the game affords you the opportunity, placing some tantalizing beacons to further distract the enemy can have some pretty nice results. The better you are at making effective use of your beacons to create some good plays, the higher the threat value the enemy will associate with them. They become a real thorn that they won't really want to ignore. And if you've achieved such respect from your opponents, you can use that drawn aggro the enemy will have towards the beacons to set up traps to camp them. It's pretty gimmicky at times and not something you want to use as your main plan of attack, and really only recommended if you're winning. Once you're good enough at becoming a professional pain in the... a master ninja like myself, you'll find it's one more possibility at your disposal, and here on this channel I'll always want to inform you about more options. And speaking of options, sometimes one of the best options is to not do anything. A bit more exciting way to put it would pretty much be sharking, but sometimes not doing anything can lead to better results than frantically taking ineffective actions. To put it more thematically, maintaining your ninja art of concealment. When the enemy knows your location, they can counter your plays with a higher success. But when they're unaware of your position and intentions, that exponentially opens up a variety of different ways for you to address something. It's also a great way for you to calm yourself, take a breather, and reassess the current state of the game. I half-jokingly titled this clip, "I win by doing nothing under a tree." But let me break down all of the nuances within. 20 seconds left on the clock, and the enemy is down a player. I already have my special, so I don't really need to turf. Most of the area is R-color ink, and I can move around pretty okay. I can see someone above me to my left, and they throw a splat bomb. That instantly means it's the junior, since the Squelchy is currently knocked out. And make note of my deliberate choice to hide behind the tree, as it provides some of the best protection I can ask for. The splash decides to enter way deep into my territory, which it didn't really know it was doing, as I've remained hidden this whole time. I decide to engage as I get the first opportunity of attack, and I can see it as a bomb rush at the ready, which is a pretty high threat to our zone. The battle happens very fast and ends just about as quickly as it started, as the enemy revved up its final chance to try and get the zone that, unfortunately for them, led to nowhere. With 3 down and only 1 person remaining, that means any activity I see of any kind belongs to that last CDS. But conveniently, my Hydra was already on top of it. Another one of my favorite tactical quotes that an old teammate of mine, Bob the Hobo, used to reference a lot, is the difference between being defensive and passive. I wasn't really doing much, but I was clearly defensively ready to respond at a moment's notice, as I had already completed all my preparation. Even just a quick 3-second meditation can be pretty eye-opening. I'll oftentimes sit back and get a lay of the land and just observe the flow of battle to know where and when I'm truly needed. Just because you're going through the motions and doing something doesn't actually mean you're doing anything. Context and purpose are very important to consider. You wouldn't really be able to tell by this exact clip alone, but as the results will show you, I was pretty busy beforehand. It got to the point where I had been running all over the place. I wanted to settle down and calm myself for just a second. Reset my frame of mind before the enemy came back, as you did see in the clip. The last sacred ninjutsu art I will reveal to you in this video is the ninja art of life. Choose to live. If you're down, you can't do anything. And if you're going to go down, you better make sure the changes you're leaving behind are worth it. For a lot of players, this will simply mean to stop holding forward into every engagement you see. Put some actual value on your own existence and make plays that have importance. Live to try again in another opportunity. The maps are fairly big, so use the space and run away to try somewhere else. Or go find a teammate and try to make a breakthrough with them. Every team will have some opening somewhere. I'll see so many players get splatted rather needlessly, or go for trades that really aren't worth it just because they feel they have to commit and it's the only option they have before them. Refer back to the entirety of the previous section if you need to. I briefly mentioned it earlier, but allow me some more elaboration on frantically taking ineffective actions. Just because you're holding down the ZR button firing your weapon doesn't mean you're actually doing anything. More confident and skilled squids have a pretty good ability to see through their adversaries who are just posturing, compared to those that are truly ready to put up a fight in a defensive position. There is no good reason I should have been able to head into a 1v armored 3 and come out on top, other than the fact I just slightly pushed them with a stronger conviction at a time when they clearly weren't ready. Both sides were playing Splatoon, but I was playing to win in the closing seconds of a close game. I think I've given you enough to chew on for the time being, as these little things can take a bit to click before they become second nature. But hopefully it wasn't too boring. I'll leave the test on all of this material up to your own abilities of implementation. But I hope to see you ninjas out on the battlefield soon. Or better yet, I hope I'm unable to see you. But like always, this has been the Gingerbread Man, and you can catch me in the next video. Thanks for watching.